Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us today, and welcome to the Go4Growth podcast. We're talking all things Barnsley today, so if you are a provider in the Barnsley area or if you're thinking about working in the Barnsley area, then this is definitely the podcast for you. I'm Gillian and I'm from Go4Growth, and I'll be the host for today's session, and I'm joined by three people today for this Q&A session all about doing business in Barnsley. First up, I'm joined by Tony. Welcome, Tony, who is a procurement officer in the Barnsley Council procurement team. Barnsley Council are the custodian of taxpayers' money on behalf of the council, so it's a really important job that Tony and the procurement team do. I'm also joined by John. Thank you for coming, John, who is Key Account Manager, Enterprising Barnsley. Enterprising Barnsley are helping businesses in the local area to develop and grow. And last but by no means least, I'm joined by Lauren from Go4Growth, who is generally the first person that most businesses will speak to in Go4Growth when they're seeking help to either grow or start out in the public sector. So thank you everyone for joining me today. It's great to have you here. So today's session is a Q&A session, and we've got a number of questions to run through. We're talking about the support that's on offer in Barnsley, how businesses or VCSE organisations can find and secure opportunities in the local area. So if it's all right with you guys, we'll crack straight on. So first question, and Tony, I'm going to put you up first if that's all right. Would you tell us a little bit about what Barnsley Council spend on goods and services every year, and give us some indication of what types of things you might buy as a council?
Yeah, so we actually plan to spend about 210 to 250 million pounds in this financial year. So that's in 22-23. It's broken down into 6 different categories of spend or directorates. So we have the Communities Directorate. The budget for that is 65 to 70 million. That's the highest of the 6 directorates. Then we've got Children's and Place, which have a very similar budget of about 40 to 45 million. Then we've got Core and Corporate. They have a budget of 20 to 25 million. That's everything from finance, legal, IT, HR. It covers a number of different areas. And then the last directorate is Public Health. The budget for that is 3 to 4 million for this year. So overall, 210 to 250 million pound is going to be planned to be spent on goods and services.
This year?
Yes.
And the financial year runs up to the end of March, right? Like
it
the
does,
regular
yes.
financial year.
Yeah.
And communities, you said, was the biggest spend.
Yeah.
What kind of thing does that cover?
Well, that can cover adults as well. So the main spend of that will be adult social care.
Right.
And that is a large amount of spend in the Barnsley area.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you ever so much. And of course, if a provider's looking to either start out for the first time or to do more business in the public sector, they've got to find the opportunities that are on offer. So Lauren, can I ask you a little bit about how businesses can find information on upcoming opportunities in Barnsley or the surrounding areas around Barnsley?
Absolutely, yes. So there's a number of ways that providers can find the upcoming opportunities. The main ways would be procurement portals. So say, for example, Barnsley Council's opportunities are advertised on a platform called Your Tender. Other places that you may be able to look, dependent on the threshold, would be either Contracts Finder or Find a Tender.
Okay. And do providers have to pay for these procurement portals?
No, these services are free of charge.
Free of charge, okay. And if you wanted to go to just one place to find everything, what would be your go-to? What would be your one portal to look at?
If you're looking for everything, I would say either Contracts Finder or Find a Tender, as these are the government-hosted portals.
Okay, and Find a Tender service is usually for the higher value, is it?
That's right.
And Contracts Finder has most things. Tony, supplementary question for me. On Contracts Finder, what level do Barnsley Council advertise on Contracts Finder from?
It's £25,000. So anything under £25,000 wouldn't generally tend to go on Contracts Finder. So your best bet then would be to check the Your Tender portal.
Right, okay. Do you advertise everything from that you're doing in the council, or are there things that you might do quotes on, for example?
Yeah, we have thresholds. So currently anything over £10,000 we would have to put on Your Tender, and we would have to go out to at least 3 quotes, and we do stipulate that 2 of those should be local suppliers. The services deal with anything between 10,000 and 70,000 themselves, obviously with the guidance of procurement if they need it. Procurement would then manage anything over £70,000.
Right. So that's really good, actually, in the local area with hundreds of millions of pounds being spent, being able to see opportunities right down from £10,000. That means that local, even small and micro-sized providers in the Barnsley area should be able to see and find opportunities to be able to take part. And that really nicely, actually, segues me into my next question for you, Tony. I'm coming for you in a minute, John, don't worry. When you get up to sort of the bigger areas or even down at the lower values, you're going through some sort of process, aren't you, as a provider or a voluntary sector organisation to secure work? And it's often called a tender or a bid. Would you have any hot tips for people around taking part about how to be successful, or the kinds of things that you know that they will need to have in their toolkit, if you like?
Yeah, so the main things that we would say, we have 3 main tips. You can find these on the Barnsley website as well, if you do need to look at that. We would always say to be on time. So make sure you know the deadlines for submitting the bid, the deadlines for asking clarification questions. We won't be able to consider any bids that are submitted late. We do want to make sure that we're fair and transparent and we give everyone the same opportunity. So be on time. Understand what is required. So the initial advert, that will ultimately you'll decide whether or not your business can undertake that contract. Ask questions. In that initial advert, there will always be a contact of someone that you can speak to if you need to ask any questions, if you need any clarifications, and take this opportunity to seek those clarifications. And then we would also say provide the relevant information. So if you do decide that your business can undertake this work, make sure that you comply with the requirements. So provide all the relevant information in respect of price, quality, social value that's been included in those tender documents, because ultimately who we choose will be based on the evaluation of that criteria. We only know what information we've been provided with. And lastly, just make sure that when you do submit your offer, that it's competitive and that you're offering value for money.
Yeah. There's some good points in there, Tony, I think, when providers are chatting with us in Go4Growth, especially if they're already doing some work for you or any other authority. I think it's easy to think that because they know you, you'll be able to take that into account when you're going through an evaluation process and scoring a bid. And so we do tell providers often, you can only be scored on what you write down. So don't assume anything. Don't assume that whoever's marking it knows what you do and how great you are. You have to tell people that. Assume they've never met you, they don't know you, tell them everything. But do also just answer the question. You know, less is more. Sometimes don't ramble on about things that haven't been asked, because you will likely sometimes have a word count or a page count, things like that. One of the pieces of advice we give is read everything too. There's lots of documents, potentially, but they all have a role to play, don't they? They're not put there for any other reason. So read all of them if you can.
And another key one there is read the question and answers that are publicised from other companies that have asked, because they're probably asking the similar questions as well.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, John. The clarification questions. There is no such thing as a silly question, and chances are, if you're asking it, another provider either would love to know the answer to that or may, as you say, have already asked it. And it can often be the quickest route to getting some guidance that you need, rather than asking a new question and then having to wait for that to be answered again. So those clarification logs. And they all are in the portal, aren't they? So the Your Tender portal that you mentioned, Lauren, once that's in a bid, all that information is in there, and you'll get an automatic notification, I think, through the portal whenever the clarification log is updated.
You do, yeah. So as well as getting a notification through the portal will also email you as well to let you know that there's unread messages.
Yeah. Brilliant. Some great tips there. Thank you. John, I'm going to come to you next, if that's all right. So, Enterprising Barnsley, would you tell us just a little bit about how Enterprising Barnsley works and the role that you play for local providers and how local providers can get involved if they want to?
Well, Enterprising Barnsley is there to support local businesses. We have a team of advisors with lots of specialist skills. And we're there to support any business, whether that be a one-man one-woman startup to a large enterprise who may be looking to relocate. And it's whatever support they need. We have a lot of links to regional suppliers, regional funding. But our key areas of support are a business startup through the Launchpad, access to finance, training and education and development of people, export and import these days as well, because there's lots of issues post-Brexit. We also look at knowledge and innovation development within companies, and links to the council as well. So we're there to support businesses to get onto the council procurement as one of our, but also onto large enterprise procurement. So any large inward investor, they're also looking for local suppliers, and we can support on that front as well. But it's also looking at business efficiency, supply chain. That's looking at suppliers for your business, but looking how you can get onto supply chains of other large enterprises as well, because there's pressures on those businesses as well to buy local as well. So we're there to support from a raft of needs. If you're thinking about doing something, come and talk to us. A lot of details on the Enterprising Barnsley website, which we'll have details of, but we're there to help. So
I know Launchpad actually. I joined Launchpad as a small business, and presumably things like, so I'm a procurement professional by trade. I know nothing about marketing. I don't understand social media. I can just about drive Facebook if I need to, and that's really only to find out people's birthdays these days. But so stuff like that, core skills that any business will need, is that when you were talking about training and development and coaching, is there stuff like that in Enterprising Barnsley?
Lots. Like you say, people start a business, they've got a great idea. Yeah. But it's one thing having a great idea, but then to exploit that and put it into business terms is very, very difficult. And sometimes it's just that someone to bounce the idea off, to talk it through, but then it's also looking for support to take that business forward, to grow that business. And not everybody can do it. And I'm not, as our key account managers, we don't know everything, but we've seen a lot. Yeah. We've got links to a lot of people to bring the right expertise in at the right time to support your business. And that's what our key role is. It's getting the right support at the right time to enable you to grow as a business.
And it's not to be underestimated, is it? Especially as a smaller business or a startup, but right up to being an enterprise organisation, you never stop learning, you never stop needing that kind of support. And certainly we at Go4Growth, having that business mentorship almost of having someone to go and chat to and play ideas around with and get those questions back that you can't ask yourself or don't know how to ask yourself is, it's really useful, I think, to any business at whatever stage of growth.
And sometimes we do in-depth work with businesses, but sometimes it's just that phone call. Yeah. It's just that I'll just check it. What are your thoughts? And that can just help the businesses at that right time.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Thank you, John. And I'm going to come back to you, Tony, if I may, with a bit of a question that links in with what John was talking about. So your spend on goods and services, the 200-ish million, one of your aspirations, I know, as an authority, is to do more in the local area, with especially with small to medium enterprises, micro-organisations in the voluntary sector. Do you have targets around that stuff? Do you have ambitions around it? Are you on a journey with that? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
We do have targets. So we have a 35% local spend target for influenceable spend. In quarter one, we were at 33%, so just slightly under, but we are spending a third of that money with local suppliers. We don't have specific targets for VCSEs as such, but we do also have a separate target for suppliers used, local suppliers used, which is 40%. In quarter one, we were at 36% on that. So again, very close, just shy of the target, but very close. But the reason for the difference in this 35% local spend and 40% local suppliers used, it's because the value of the contracts of local suppliers do tend to be smaller. As you can imagine, it's Barnsley, maybe some of the big tech or the big construction contracts, we may struggle to source from Barnsley. It's going to end up going to some of the larger cities just because it's not available in our local market. We do measure local spend as Barnsley. There are some other local authorities that measure it regionally, so they would have said recorded it as South Yorkshire as opposed to Barnsley, whereas we do specifically record it in Barnsley.
Well, so that 33% that you mentioned is actually right on our doorstep in the Barnsley area in our local boundary.
Yeah.
And that is great. I know it's a little bit under the target, but, you know, that is a great figure, and I think demonstrates the commitment from the authority to wanting to know what the talent is that we have on our doorstep and be able to access it. And I think there's an important point in there as well around direct supply to the council and indirect. You were talking about the supply chain and subcontractors. The supply chain isn't a dirty word. You know, one of the things that presumably you'll be passing through on big construction procurements is to the first tier supplier the need for themselves to also work with local Barnsley businesses wherever it's possible, local trade. So even if the relationship isn't directly with the council or the college or the police or the hospital, indirectly you can work for the public sector as a subcontractor as well, and those things should be kept an eye on by providers. Is that
yeah, that's
fair,
right. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And I think one of the problems that I guess providers have is there is a lot of help out there. Sometimes one of the most difficult things can be is sort of sorting the noise out a little bit from support. So it's great to know what Enterprising Barnsley are doing. But of course, Go4Growth ourselves are hoping to support and are supporting providers specifically around public sector procurement. So, Lauren, if I can ask you a little bit about how we do that. Do we, you know, what events are there? If there's a provider watching or listening today that's thinking, right, I want some specific help on public sector procurement through Go4Growth, where can I go and find out the details? Where would you send them?
So I'd send you mainly directly to our website, maybe to our YouTube channel, any of our previous webinars, events that we've hosted. We try and get some content that we'll upload to our YouTube channel. On our website, you can find details of any upcoming events, details of past events and where to find them. Any support or guidance, content-wise, that we have available, you will be able to find directly through our website. If you subscribe to our social media channels, say, for example, we're active on Facebook, LinkedIn, we're also everywhere, really, Twitter and Instagram as well. Our Eventbrite page, any upcoming events that we are hosting will be advertised on there quite early on. That's where I would direct you to begin with, but also we do host live events in the area. Recently we've run a couple of events at Barnsley's Digital Media Centre, which are free to attend. You can find those on our Eventbrite page, like I've explained.
And same question that I asked around the portals in terms of will it cost a provider anything to sign up to all these portals, of which there are, you know, a number of them. Does it cost a provider anything to join Go4Growth and get the support from us?
Absolutely not, no. So Go4Growth public sector funded, so any support, training or guidance that you do take from Go4Growth is completely free of charge.
Cool. Is that the same for Enterprising Barnsley, John?
Enterprising Barnsley, yes.
Yeah.
We're a free service to business. Obviously, some of the things that it leads into there may be a cost to businesses, but there can also be grant funding towards that as well.
Yeah, and that's actually my next question for you is about other sources of money. So procurement is a big source of opportunity for providers, but not the only one. There is grant funding through all of the public sector, the council included. What other funding routes can providers look at, John?
Well, just to touch on what Tony said about Barnsley, one of my roles is also with the supply chain for the wider region of South Yorkshire. So what Barnsley are looking for, you've also got Sheffield, Doncaster and Rotherham looking for as well in terms of local procurement. And so as businesses start to look at that, they should be looking for contracts slightly wider, because all local authorities are looking for that local supply chain. They've all got the same targets, similar targets. So they're all looking for local suppliers, and a supplier Doncaster supplier in Barnsley is much more local than somewhere north east or down south. So those contracts are there. So businesses should be looking for that. In terms of business support and grants, yes, there is funding available. It's there to help businesses make step change. So there's funding through innovation, there's funding through business development, current grants available, business productivity grants available within the region, digital innovation grant to help businesses invest in digital equipment and innovation that will, again, help to grow the business. There's also the Skills Bank, which is now Skills Bank 3, which is just starting to open up, should be opening up in September, where that can support our businesses develop their people. That could be specific training, or it could be knowledge transfer, developing people, because that's one of the we're having a lot of problems with business recruitment and getting people. So to develop your people you've got, enhance their career prospects, and retain them that way. So that there's funding for that as well. That's not fully funded, but it varies depending on what the training is. And then there's also Made Smarter, which can bring in specialists into business, and that's part funded as well. So there is grant funding available. It's very dynamic. It changes frequently. What I would say is, if a business is thinking about doing something, talk to us. See what's available at that time. Don't use the grant funding to push you. Decide what you want to do as a business, and then come and talk to us and see what supports can accelerate it, maybe get that done a little bit quicker, and maybe give you that push to really push on as a business. So there is support out there. Talk to us.
Yeah, that's great advice. And we've done a few around the wider Sheffield City region where the key account managers such as yourself, John, have been working with a business around that grant funding, and then actually we've supported as well with the application for that grant, because you will have to write something down to secure the money, and whoever's looking at it will have a criteria to meet, same as you would with a procurement. So
the grant funding tends to be, is it going to help the business grow? Yeah. Is it going to create jobs, local jobs, local spend? Is it going to safeguard jobs? And so that's the payback they're wanting from that grant support that they may offer. And is it in the right area? Does it make sense? Does it make sense for the business? And they'll check on that, because again, it's public money, and we want to make sure it's spent correctly, and we get a return from it. So.
And this is going to be probably a silly question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. A grant, it's not payable in terms of, it's not like a loan. You don't have to pay it back. The grant is given.
So sometimes there's stipulations around what it's got to be spent on. There's got to be evidence of it. But no, it's not a loan. It's not a payback. It's there's hurdles to get it in the first place, as you would expect, because it's all our money. But no, it's a grant. It's not a loan.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that is the end of the questions that I had. Thank you very much. So thank you for taking part. I think there's been some great information and advice for local businesses who want to do more in the public sector, whether that's directly or as a subcontractor. I think it's fair to say, it certainly sounds to me like there are lots of opportunities on our doorstep in Barnsley. There is investment in Barnsley as an area. There's lots of help and support out there. If it feels like it might be in the too difficult space, or it feels too big, or it's dead scary. We know this as a small business ourselves. It is quite scary to take those first few steps, but the help is there through Enterprising Barnsley, through the council themselves, and through Go4Growth. So if you're listening or watching as a provider and think, actually, I'd like to find out more, our contact details are available. Do just get in touch with any of us. And thank you for listening, and thank you for taking part.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.